On a steel examination table, bathed in the cold light of a forensic laboratory, rests a human skull. It carries no name, no identity, no history that anyone living can yet confirm. It is, in the most literal sense, a mystery. And yet, within the geometry of its bones lies the possibility of recognition. Forensic facial reconstruction is the discipline of giving faces back to the nameless. It sits at a rare and remarkable intersection, where forensic science meets artistic craft, where anatomy informs imagination, and where the silent testimony of bone is translated into the recognizable features of a human being. The practice is older than we might expect. Ancient Egyptians sculpted death masks over the faces of the deceased. 19th century anatomists began mapping the relationship between skull and skin. But it was the 20th century that transformed this art into a forensic instrument, one now accepted in courtrooms around the world. Today, it stands as one of the most extraordinary tools available to investigators seeking justice for the unidentified dead. Before an artist touches clay or opens a digital interface, a forensic specialist must speak the language of bone. The human skull is not simply a container, it is a map. Every ridge, every hollow, every angle encodes information about the individual who once inhabited it. Cranial landmarks, the supraorbital ridge above the eye sockets, the zygomatic arches framing the cheeks, the nasal aperture at the center of the face, each provide precise measurements that guide what the finished face will look like. The shape of the orbital cavity determines the set of the eyes. The width and profile of the nasal aperture strongly predicts the nose's form. The mandible, the lower jaw, reveals the chin's prominence, the jaw's angle, and the overall width of the lower face. Bones also carry evidence of age. The fusion of cranial sutures, the wear on dental surfaces, the density of bone, all speak to how long a person had lived. Sexual dimorphism leaves its marks too. The male skull typically displays a more pronounced brow ridge, a squarer jaw, and a larger overall structure, while female skulls tend towards smoother, more gracile features. Ancestry markers, variations in orbital shape, nasal structure, and facial prognathism further refine the reconstruction, helping an artist approach not just a face, but a specific human face. Knowing the shape of bone is only the beginning. The human face is composed of layers: muscle, fat, cartilage, and skin, and the thickness of those layers varies systematically across the facial landscape. This is where decades of painstaking research become indispensable. From the foundational cadaver studies of Rhine and Moore in the 1980s to subsequent work refining measurements across diverse populations, scientists have established average tissue depths at more than 21 specific anatomical landmarks on the human face. Points at the midline of the forehead, along the cheekbones, at the chin, beside the lips, each has a known average depth, correlated with sex, ancestry, and body mass index. In practice, small cylindrical markers, typically rubber or wax pegs cut to precise measured lengths, are affixed to a cast of the skull at each of these landmark positions. They protrude from the surface like miniature posts, each one representing the distance from bone to skin at that exact location. Together, they form a three-dimensional scaffolding, an invisible architecture of the face waiting to be revealed. With the skull cast prepared and tissue depth markers in place, the work of reconstruction can begin. It is a process that demands equal parts scientific rigor and artistic sensitivity, and it proceeds, whether in clay or in a digital environment, through a disciplined sequence of steps. First, the musculature. Working from anatomical reference, the artist, or the software, builds up the muscles of the face, layer by layer. The temporalis muscle sweeps down from the temple toward the jaw. The masseter fills the cheek. The orbicularis oculi encircles the eye socket. Each muscle is added in correct proportion, anchored to the underlying bony landmarks, its thickness guided by the tissue depth markers. This is not guesswork, it is applied anatomy. Then come the features. The eyes are set within the orbits, their size and spacing derived from measurement. The nose is reconstructed using established formulae. Nasal width correlates with the aperture. Tip projection follows the nasal spine. The mouth reflects the distance between the canine teeth. The ears, among the most individually variable features, must be estimated from general age and ancestry indicators. Throughout this process, the artist must walk a careful line. Science defines the boundaries. Interpretation fills the space within them. A forensic reconstruction is not a portrait. It is a probability, the most statistically likely face for a given skull, rendered with enough humanity to be recognized. The distinction between a two-dimensional drawing and a three-dimensional clay or digital model is significant. Both methods have solved cases, but they differ in their application, their cost, and the depth of visual information they convey.
For much of its history, forensic facial reconstruction was an entirely manual craft. Today, digital technology has transformed it beyond recognition, and in doing so, has made it a more powerful tool than ever before. Three-dimensional laser scanning can capture a skull's geometry with sub-millimeter precision, generating a digital model that can be manipulated, measured, and shared without ever touching the original remains. Software platforms purpose-built for forensic reconstruction allow practitioners to apply tissue depth data algorithmically, build facial musculature from preloaded anatomical libraries, and render the resulting face under variable lighting conditions. The advantages for courtroom presentation are considerable. A digital reconstruction can be annotated. It can be rotated in real time. The entire process, from bare skull to finished face, can be documented and demonstrated step by step, allowing the methodology to be examined and challenged. Reproducibility, the cornerstone of scientific admissibility, is built into the digital workflow in ways that traditional clay methods simply cannot match. The courtroom, ultimately, is the final destination, and digital tools speak the language of evidence with uncommon clarity. The journey from forensic laboratory to courtroom is governed by a rigorous legal framework. In the United States, the admissibility of scientific evidence is assessed under the Daubert standard, a set of criteria established by the Supreme Court requiring that expert evidence be grounded in a testable methodology, subjected to peer review, and accepted within the relevant scientific community. Forensic facial reconstructions are typically admitted not as positive identification. They cannot on their own prove who someone was, but as demonstrative evidence, a tool to prompt recognition from the public or to corroborate other identifying information. The forensic artist who produced the reconstruction may be called as an expert witness, required to walk the court through each step of the process, defend the methodology, and acknowledge its limitations with transparent candor. The ethical responsibilities here are profound. An inaccurate or misleading reconstruction does not merely fail, it has the potential to direct an investigation wrongly or to cloud a jury's judgment. Every decision must be documented.
Every departure from the statistical baseline must be justified. The forensic artist serves not one client, but two: the science and the truth. Behind every unidentified set of remains is a story that someone, somewhere, is still waiting to hear. A family that never received a phone call. A community that never had a chance to grieve. Forensic facial reconstruction, for all its scientific complexity, is ultimately an act of profound human compassion. Cases that languished for decades have been resolved when a reconstructed face was recognized. Cold files have been reopened. Families have finally found closure. The work does not always end in conviction, but it often ends in truth. The forensic artist occupies one of the most quietly remarkable roles in the justice system: part scientist, part sculptor, part advocate for the dead. In their hands, bone becomes face, anonymity becomes identity, and silence, at last, becomes